Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday, February 28th. Mark Milam here, your mortgage professional. Let's talk about it. Boy, interest rates, mortgage interest rates at the best levels of 2025. We'll take every single bit of that, helping home ownership affordability as we see mortgage interest rates improving throughout the week. Some note rates better by a quarter of a percentage point. So if you started out the week at 6.5, 6 5/8, you might be down closer to 6.25, 6 3/8. Let's take a quick look at mortgage-backed securities. This is the week that was here. The past 5 days, you can see only one of those was relatively flat. The rest of them, we saw mortgage backs increase in value. That means the associated interest rate is coming down. Why is this happening? So we have been so geared and so focused on the Federal Reserve and inflation for the past 2-3 years that's really been the primary focus, is what's happening with the Federal Reserve, what's happening with inflation, and maybe what's happening with labor. But the reason we're getting a rally in bonds and an improvement to mortgage interest rates is a little more complex now. So certainly the economic data that's coming in is not standing in the way. I won't say it's the causal factor, but it's not a roadblock either. It's not a hurdle either. In other words, we got the personal consumption expenditures today came in at 2.5% year over year. That's a downtick over the past several months. Let me flip the screen around here and I'll kind of show you this. Personal consumption expenditures came in today at 2.5%. It was right in between 2.5 and 2.6. I was rounding down, but December was 2.9% and November was 2.8%. So moving in the right direction. Remember, the Fed's target rate is 2%. So we're heading in the right direction. In other words, no roadblock here for a bond rally. It's nothing stopping it. We also saw information on jobless claims. I'll scroll down the screen and bring this up into view. Weekly jobless claims at 242,000 against an estimate of 221,000. In other words, 20,000 more jobless claims this past week than consensus estimates. That's not necessarily going to move the needle, but it's not stopping a bond rally either. And this is important about the economic data. The economic data now is not the driver, but it's not the brake either. And that's good news. It's staying out of the way because we're trending in the right direction. So if it's not the driver, well, what is the driver? Well, it's interesting because a lot of it is now new economic policy, and social impact aside, political impact aside, the austerity at the federal government level is translating into improved market sentiment in the bond market. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I'll flip the screen back around and I'm going to pull up some posts to illustrate my point. And one of these involves military budget spending. So it's no secret that the president and this administration are calling on the European Union to increase their contributions to defense spending for NATO up to 5%. And this is the reason why. The orange line here is what the United States has been spending, and this is what the European Union has been spending down here, and the president has called upon the European Union to step up. So the burden is not so great on the United States. Listen, that is positively received by the bond market. Why would that be positively received? Well, because we're deficit spending in the United States, we don't take in enough tax revenue to support all of our spending. So the way that we fund that spending is by auctioning off our debt. Our debt is in bonds. And so that puts a lot of pressure on our debt, our bonds, and we have to allow for higher and higher rates on that debt in order to get people to buy it so we can fund all the things we want to do, including military spending. Well, if we're going to ask others to step up and pay a larger percentage of that military spending towards an organization like NATO, well, that means the United States spending can come down. That means we have to sell less and less government debt. That puts less pressure, upward pressure on interest rates, and mortgages are just going along for the ride because mortgages are just long-term bonds. So this is a really interesting sort of geopolitical thing that's playing out as this new administration moves into the White House, and some of these moves that are made, whether it's layoffs and decreased federal workers or a calling upon our brethren overseas in the European Union to be more participative as it pertains to NATO, it's putting less pressure on the bond market, and that is helping mortgage rates to fall. Listen, it's not necessarily always going to be this way, but it is a unique shift in tone over what we've been watching now for the past 3 years. We've been so laser focused on the Federal Reserve, the Fed funds rate, and inflation that all this other pressure on the bond market has gone largely ignored. And now we're seeing a little bit of relief in government spending, or at least the sentiment that there's going to be relief in government spending. That takes a lot of pressure off the bond market, and that allows mortgage rates to come down, and that's why we're seeing bonds rally and mortgage rates improve this past week. Who knows how long this will last? Who knows how long the economic data will stay out of the way so bonds can continue coming down, but for the time being, improved affordability for those looking to borrow to buy a home. If I can be of any service to you over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out, mark.milam@highlandmtg.com. Thanks.